Welcome to Conversations with Coach Lloyd. This week, we have a very special guest. He is Diaa Nour. Diaa is the Ventum CEO. He's an accomplished businessman and lifelong athlete. He co-founded Ventum in 2015 after successfully exiting the telecom sector. Ventum began as a passion project seeking to change the bike industry by introducing new aerodynamic technology and the first triathlon-specific bike. The company creates high-performance racing bicycles using the design and technology from fighter jets and Formula One. As CEO of Ventum, Diaa has led the company through development from the innovative NS1 road bike and the recent introduction of the GS1 gravel bike. He's overseen the move of the company from a startup down in Miami to its current headquarters in Heber City, Utah. Diaa is a lifelong endurance athlete. He really enjoys the marathon, and he's an avid cyclist. Please welcome my guest, Diaa Nour.
Lloyd!
Hey, Diaa, how's it going?
It's going well, Lloyd. It's good to see you. How's everything?
Oh, it is good. It is good. How is life treating you?
Can't complain. Cannot complain. I'm right here in Utah. Just as you mentioned, it's our new headquarters, and I love it. I honestly love it. It's just trying to warm up, though. We're having a pretty long winter, or a late summer, if you will,
Okay.
or onset of summer. But yeah, cannot complain. I do love it here. You have to visit me here, man. You haven't visited me yet.
No, I haven't visited the new spot. I mean, we're gonna have to make a trip out there. Every time you move, I get to see the new location.
There you go.
Out in Miami, and then you were out in Colorado for a little bit.
Yep.
So yep. Now that you're there, I'll have to check out what kind of racing scene you have in Utah.
It's a pretty competitive one, I'll tell you.
I heard, because I think they just opened up St. George is around by you.
Yeah. So we actually have a pretty incredible phenomenon this year where we had the St. George 70.3 was the North American champs. That just happened 2 weekends ago. And then 70.3 Worlds is also in St. George in September. So we got some serious racing. And then, just like as you mentioned, they just announced the full Ironman coming back. And I don't know if you know this or not, Lloyd, but this Ironman happened about, I want to say 10 years ago, maybe more, maybe less. With all the COVID, my whole years are completely turned around a little bit. But I think it was like 9 or 10 years ago, and they had it, and it was too difficult. The DNF rate. Oh yeah, and so now they're bringing it back. So I hope they amended the course. I know they did. Actually, I don't hope. I know they did.
Oh, they changed the course?
They changed it. No, Lloyd, you have to understand. It was like the original course was by far away the hardest Ironman on the circuit anywhere in the world. So yeah.
I mean, some of us enjoy that. Some of us, I mean, that's what we sign up for.
It's still going to be challenging. It's still going to be challenging.
I've seen my fair share of tough courses. So if something comes out and they say it's hard, I mean, they've got my money. So
yeah, but Lloyd, there's hard, and then there is, and I don't have the stat in front of me, but that was the highest level of DNFs in any Ironman event in the history of the company.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. You just make it into a invitation only or a championship event. Make that the national championship for the U.S. So you sign up. Buyer beware. So, but yeah, I saw they were bringing it back, and I remember that, after the first year or two, the DNF was so high they scrapped it because I guess no one would sign up for it. But now it's back. So I'll look into it, and they'll probably get my money if it's anything as hard as it used to be. Or
there you go,
close to it. So that means I'll definitely get to visit you sooner rather than later.
Perfect.
So, but I know you are. I want to jump into, some of your endurance background,
Mhm.
and then we'll get into, the Ventum of it all.
Yeah,
But I know you are, an ultra runner, uh,
yeah.
and even though you're in the cycling community now, and that's your thing, I know you're a big time ultra runner, and you love that. So,
Yeah, running is my first love, I always say. So I love to cycle, and I would say I cycle more than I run now, or at least these past few months. But running's always been my first love. It's been my passion, and that's where I found my love for endurance sports. It was on the running, and like you said, I started doing a lot of marathons. Did a lot of ultra marathons, and I'm always down to do a long run. And by long, I mean long.
well, I'm gonna start with, I don't know, it was, with the pandemic you lose track of time, but it was
Yeah,
last year or the year before, I think on one of your birthdays,
yep,
you decided that you were gonna go and do a long run to
yep,
celebrate your birthday.
yep.
What was that, and what distance did that turn out to be?
So that's a good question. So I have a tradition that I run my age every year.
Okay.
So I'm 40 now. I'm turning 41 in September. My 39th birthday, I ran 39 miles in LA. So I went from Malibu down and back up. Yeah, so that was 39 miles. Now, last year, I did 40 miles for my 40th um, in around New York City.
Okay.
And but there's a little trick to it. So I have to beat my time from the previous year every year, and I'm adding a mile. So yeah, yeah. So last year
Okay.
I averaged an 8:23 pace for the 40 miler. So now
Really?
I'm gonna have to go a hair faster than that for 41 miles if I want to keep the tradition going.
So is it wherever you find yourself on your birthday, or do you specifically pick a place where you want to run, that kind of mileage?
That's a good question. It usually it falls right on my birthday or within it, and it's usually where I am, right? And so I
Okay.
was traveling in LA for work, so that's where I did it. I was in New York as well for work, so that's where I did it. But I mean, I think if it's up to me, I'll probably still try to go down to sea level as opposed to doing it here, which I'm at anywhere between 6,000 and 10,000 feet, depending on my house here is at 6,000. It only goes up. So
Oh, wow.
if I have to choose, I'll probably come down to sea level. Give me a little bit of an edge.
Oh, wow. Okay, so every year you got to add a year and do it faster than the previous year.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
that's a lot. So we're at 41. Well, if you are ever in town, I,
Yes,
I may join you for a couple of them.
please, please.
As part of the celebration. But I'm still wrapping my brain around having to go faster every year as you add a mile. I mean,
That is the tough
normally
part.
you give a little room for getting older and the pace slows down. Not
No, no, other side, other way.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. So I
Yeah,
guess with that as your starting ground, where every year you're adding a mile, that then takes us to, you know, I think you're one of the only people I know who's done the Grand Canyon run. And
yeah,
most
the rim
people
to rim to
understand
rim.
it as, I'll do it once, I'll run the Grand Canyon, and that's in and of itself is one thing. Then you hear a couple people talk about, well, you start on one side, go and come back. So you go rim to rim. But for some reason, you added an extra spin into the mix and did rim to rim to rim.
Yep, that's correct. Rim to
All
rim to
right,
rim.
so walk me through, spell that out for me, because I don't
So
think most people even know about, the Grand Canyon run, that you could even run in the Grand Canyon to begin with.
so this the best phrase I can use here is ignorance is bliss. I was super fit last year, and I'm
Okay.
still in good shape now, but not nearly to the point I was. And honestly, I wasn't doing much running at all. I was mostly cycling. But then I have an ultra runner friend of mine who has always wanted to do this challenge: 50 miles in the Grand Canyon, 22,000 feet of vertical change, which is a lot.
Oh,
It's a lot.
wow.
And yeah, it's a lot. And so I didn't know much about it. I didn't read much about it. I like to just jump in, right? And And I knew my fitness was there. There's no doubt. Like, I know that I can handle that. But what I didn't really understand was it was the last weekend of June. They had record heat. It was 120 degrees. And I don't know if you remember, this was last summer. There were all these fires.
Yep.
And so the fires were so close to the Grand Canyon, they shut off all the water supplies. So here we are, there was some extra challenges to the race, but I flew in, we drove 4 hours to Grand Canyon, and we started at 2 in the morning. So 2 in the morning from the South Rim with headlamps on. And the first thing you do is you just descend 6,500 feet. And let me tell you that by the time you get to the bottom, I mean, your quads are screaming.
Wow.
So then we started running through the canyon, and it was the closest thing to like a religious experience I could ever describe.
Really?
Oh my Lord, the sun started coming out around 5:30 in the morning. Okay. And it just starts coming over the canyon, and all the colors are almost like it's like an Instagram filter. The saturation was so dominant, and it was just amazing. It was amazing. So we're running through that canyon, and then once in a while you see like donkeys or deer, or it was actually kind of freaky in the middle of the night, because when my lamp would go to and all of a sudden just two eyes darting back at me. It was quite scary. And so, and then, you make it back, you make it up to the North Rim, and then again, you got to climb 6,500, and then you got to do it again and again. And so it's, it was one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. It was by far one of the hardest runs, but not one. It was the hardest run I've ever done in my life. And the fact that it was 120 degrees in the canyon, and the fact that all the water stations, or most of them, were shut off. So we had to get filters and go to the streams and kind of filter our own water. Yeah, that was the only way to do it. But you know what? My biggest fear the whole time was the rattlesnakes, right? There are countless rattlesnakes. And I am petrified of snakes in general, but rattlesnakes are a step above. Yeah. I didn't see a single rattler. And the reason was it was too hot. So they usually come out and sun themselves in the rocks to gather heat. It was so hot, they stay away. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So
So I've got so much to unpack with questions here. So is it a race, or is it your own?
It's not a race. It's definitely something that
It's not like 200 of us are all starting off at the rim, and we all run down and go for time. It's individual. When you do this challenge, it's you figure it out for yourself, the logistics.
100%.
And 100%. You go all in. Okay.
In fact, when we were dipping down at 2 in the morning, there was nobody there. We did not see a single soul until probably 9 or 10 hours into the run.
Wow.
So if you get in trouble out there, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You're in trouble.
Okay, so you figure out the logistics on your own. You find out there's no water. So normally, I mean, I'm thinking of a race where I've got, there's an aid station set up for me every, so many miles in an ultra. So if there's not a race, so that means you're generally you got to carry everything in and out with you, kind of a thing.
Yep. So at any given time, when my water was full, it was 2 liters. It was 3 liters of water. 2 behind me, and half here. So 3 liters of water. So a gallon. I'm carrying a gallon of water, and then all my nutrition.
Okay.
And that actually makes it quite challenging. I mean, it adds 10, 15 pounds right there, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. So I guess normally then when you go, they have not aid stations, but the water's turned on so you can refill at designated locations and top off. But in your case, those are off. So now we're going into the natural stream. Now,
I think there was one station that was on, and the rest, they were just off. But there's this beautiful river right next to us. So you just dip in there.
I'm thinking like all kind of, life in the water, and like not drinking from a stream just out there.
I was a little concerned, but my thought was by the time the effects of the dirty water would hit, I'd probably be done. So,
Okay.
so that was my hope, at least. That was.
So it's kind of like, life or death. I'm gonna drink it, postpone whatever comes a little bit later, but at least I got some hydration to keep on moving.
Yeah, exactly. But can I tell you? Do you want to hear the craziest thing? Is I ended up drinking over 15 liters.
Wow.
During that, yeah, from either from the streams and from all this, 15 liters. And I hope this is not TMI. I never went to the bathroom once.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
15 liters of water in 14 hours or 13 hours and change, and never went to the bathroom once. That just shows you how hot it was.
Yeah.
It was just evaporating. It was just evaporating.
Wow. I can't even imagine the calorie count. So when you go from one rim to the next, do you have like a car parked on the other side to re-up on some supplies?
No, sir.
No. You just, in fact, do a U-turn and come back.
Yeah. In fact, the North Rim was completely shut down. Like you could see this, and that's the thing too, is like the air quality was not that great because of the fires. But when we got to the North Rim, you could actually really see how bad it was, and it was completely shut down. So yeah, no. Yeah, you were out there on your own. It was crazy. Yeah.
Wow. So when 8 hours into it, when you start to finally see people, are they also running it, or are they tourists?
So the reason we started seeing people, it's people coming from the South Rim, like taking either donkeys down or even walking down, and then they would walk out a mile. So it was just literally the last few miles is when we started seeing pedestrians, if you will, coming to see the Grand Canyon. So, but like in the middle of it, nope, not a single soul.
Wow. Now you mentioned you were in really good shape to do that adventure. So what kind of training does that look like? Because around, I can't think of any place where I've got that kind of descent to practice running straight down as a part of a program.
Oh, me too. And again, I have to go back to ignorance is bliss. I had never descended this much. I had never, I probably had climbed that much, but like, I just didn't think about it, right? Okay. And the training was not structured. It's just when you get to a certain fitness level, and I mean, we go out for century rides all the time, right? Okay. And remember, we start at 6,000, we climb usually to 10, 12,000. And so, these centuries are not flat Florida centuries. These are intense. It's an all-day affair. And fitness carries, right? If anything, I would say, it played in my favor to be doing just long rides all the time because, it got my fitness up, but it didn't really put a toll on my knees and my joints or anything like that. I think if I had strictly done run training for it, I think that would have been a bit more difficult. I mean, I did it to a certain extent, but I don't think I ran more than like 2 hours at any given time. Okay. Yeah. So I think that probably played well for me, actually.
Not bad. Well, you're piquing my interest here. I'm gonna have to
do a
little research on the rim to rim. I'm not sure if I want to do 2 or 3 or just 1, but I like the idea of
You should do it.
I've been to the Grand Canyon in a car. It never even crossed my mind, to run down. Especially when everyone is using donkeys or whatnot to get down there, it never even crossed my mind like, oh, you know what? It's an option to go and run through there. So I'm going to reevaluate that now.
Good.
So you talked about, the biking and cycling, 100 miles and everything. So I want to turn my attention over to Ventum. That is, your company. That you started, and I'm just trying to figure out what was the thought process when you were like, hey, you know what, there are lots of tri bikes out here, but I'm gonna invent and create a better mousetrap. I'm gonna build a better bike, or what you perceive, like, hey, I'm gonna just revamp this whole thing. What was the thought process for that? To bite into that?
Of course. I'll give you the context, the catalyst behind it. I mean, you've known me for many, many years. You've known me from even before Ventum, right? So I used to own a telecom company in DC, and I exited in May of 2014. And I remember saying, I'm going to go on a mini retirement. I'll do whatever I want. This is going to be great. Not be a slave to my BlackBerry, because that's probably what we were using back then. And just, I was like, this is going to be amazing. If I want to read a book all day, I'll do that. I just want to not have any responsibilities. Fast forward 3 weeks into my hiatus, and I was as depressed as I could be. I had no drive. I had no purpose. And I had already started thinking about, well, what is my next thing? What am I going to do next? And at the time, my brother Omar was a professional triathlete, and I was surrounded by the sport. So I was like, you know what? I want to do something in triathlon and indoor sports. And I started looking at events, putting on events. And that felt a little risky, and because it's just one day, and I just kept researching, what do I want to do, and obviously the bikes were such a big part of it all, that my eye was always towards that. Fast forward maybe like a couple weeks later, I was lucky enough to meet aerodynamicists who were avid triathletes, whose kids were professional triathletes, who were, as a pet project, essentially trying to design the world's fastest triathlon bike, starting from the ground up.
Okay.
And so I came in, in that stage when they were just doing iteration after iteration. And the whole point was to build them in their garage, make a handful, and give them to their friends, right? And I saw what was happening, and I said, wait, guys, no. We're not going to build a handful of these. Let's really fine tune this machine, and let's take it to market. And that's how the Ventum 1 came about. And now it was also a perfect time for that bike to come out. And what I mean by that is that back then, all of the bigger brands were taking UCI legal TT bikes, slapping on a different front end, and calling it a non-draft triathlon bike. Okay. I understand why they were doing that, right? They were doing that because they had tons of capex, they had tons of R&D, they had tons of mold. Like the expense to develop a bike is enormous. Okay. And when these bikes were being built, triathlon didn't have a critical mass. So no one was building a bike strictly for triathletes, right? Think about it. It was like back in the day, it was kind of like this exotic sport. And people were like, wait, do you swim first? You run first? What do you do for? Oh, it's 3 sports, right? Like now everybody knows what a triathlon is, right? It's become so mainstream. The best way to compare is marathons 50, 60 years ago, right? So same exact way, there was not enough mass participation to warrant to build a bike from the ground up for triathlon. Now, because I came in with no legacy systems, right, quote unquote, so I didn't have expensive mold, I didn't have tons of costs that they've already invested in those bikes, I was able to start from scratch and say, we're not bound by the UCI, because Ironman isn't. So why don't we do the fastest possible bike we can make following Ironman rules and not the UCI rules? So obviously, when you look at the Ventum 1, there's no seat stays or there's no down tube. It just looks so different. And the best part of it all is that from there, other manufacturers have followed suits, and they call it a non-traditional frame, right? And now there are a handful of companies that are making these non-traditional bikes because they realize A, they're faster, and B, there is mass participation. There is a market there. So that's the story of the Ventum 1.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when you were working on it and then it came out and I was like, wow, this is great. Because the design and everything was totally different from the Z frame was no top tube. It was a whole different look to it. So
well, absolutely. And we're able to explore so many different areas to make improvements in. One thing is hydration. Water bottle cages and water bottles create drag. They slow bikes down. And when manufacturers are testing these bikes, they don't put water bottle cages, or water bottles on them for the most part. Well, an Ironman athlete needs to hydrate. So we were looking at how do we take a negative, something that creates drag, and make it a positive. And that's how our integrated water bottle, which is patented, which is awesome, has really differentiated us from others, where we're the only bike in the world, triathlon bike in the world, till this day, that's faster with its water bottle on than off.
Okay.
Right. So we took, so again, like we were able to do some very innovative thinking there.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I like mine. I got one. She's been in one race before she was sidelined for the pandemic.
Oh man!
But she was definitely a great performer. I will say.
Good.
It did a huge improvement on my time, and it realized that usually it's the engine, but for this time around, the machine was faster than the engine.
As long they complement one another.
Yeah, it worked out pretty nice. So now we go from having the Ventum 1. You brought that to the market, and then all of a sudden, a couple years in, all of a sudden now you're expanding to now the race.
Road.
What is the race legal? Not race legal.
UCI legal.
UCI legal.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. So Lloyd, this was always the plan. Like we were never going to be a one trick pony.
Okay.
We know we want to start in triathlon because it's an area that we had a lot of experience in, and we felt like if we could make it in triathlon, which is a small niche saturated market, the other markets are only going to get easier. So we started with triathlon with the Ventum 1. Did rather well. Took it all the way to becoming the global Ironman bike partner, which has never happened before us. So that was exciting.
I saw that.
And then we turned our sights to the road market. And the road market, you have to split into a couple different verticals, but one of them is the ITU. Okay. So ITU triathlon racing follows UCI. So Olympics, like in Tokyo, this summer, in fact, you'll see several Ventum athletes on them. They use the road bike. And so we did, that's a benefit, but also the road bike opens us up to the entire road cycling community. And I would say that this bike was probably harder to develop than the Ventum 1 in some sense. Yeah.
Now, I would think it's,
you think it's easier?
Well, because you're following a standard, with the Ventum 1, you have to think outside the box and just come from scratch. Whereas with the ITU legal, there's certain parameters that you have to follow in order to be compliant. So, and just the naked eye, they all, look the same, except for, the nuances of like, oh, they have this or that. But, to the naked eye, you wouldn't be able to, the average observer wouldn't be able to say, what makes one different from the other per se.
Exactly. And you just said it. So essentially our sandbox of creativity got a lot smaller because of the UCI rules, right? And so how do you create a product that separates itself from others, that has a unique identifier under those very strict guidelines? And so that's why I would say it was almost more challenging to do the Ventum NS1 than it was for the Ventum 1.
Okay.
And so how did we do it? We looked at the market and said, look, there are lightweight bikes for climbing, round tubes. And then there are these aero road bikes that are a bit heavier, but they're good for just your straight, kind of flatter courses. And the industry would always tell you can have a lightweight bike or an aero bike. Well, we want to do both. So, so that's we were the first to come to market with a lightweight aero road bike. In fact, Specialized just launched theirs last fall, which again is great to see, people going towards that trend. And I understand why the industry didn't want to do it for a lot. I mean, we can get a little political, but why? I probably would rather you buy two bikes than one bike. So, I get it. Okay. I understand. Yeah. So, I don't blame the industry for doing it, but we have the technology, the innovation, the capacity to do both in one, and it be a superior bike, both when it climbs and when it's in time to get aero. So, the NS1 has been a huge seller for us. It took off. We have a lot of fun people, some former pros riding it. It's become like the bike of choice to a lot of people, and it's been great. It's been great.
I just noticed over it was earlier this weekend or so, recently, with the Olympic trials, I saw that two of the athletes who got on the podium were riding
Ventum. Yeah. Morgan Pearson, Summer Rappaport.
Yeah.
So we've got 2 athletes already going from the US, going to the Olympics. We should have 3 to 4 from the US.
Okay.
And then we have some from Canada. So there's going to be a solid representation of Ventums in the Olympics this year, which is so exciting, considering that last Olympic, we didn't even have a road bike. So yeah.
So when we look at the triathlon race, this summer, we'll be seeing the Ventum out there on the course.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's going to be exciting.
Oh yeah.
Now you also moving from the NS1, then you I think recently launched the gravel.
The Ventum GS1.
Yes. So walk me through. You just said the market wants you to buy more than one bike. So
yeah.
You had lightweight or aero, and then also now you're like, oh, by the way, I'm going to combine that. But since you still need to have N+1,
that's right.
Here's a gravel bike. So,
I mean, gravel is just it's the fastest growing segment of all racing, right? E-bikes is actually growing faster than anybody, but we don't race e-bikes.
Okay.
But today there are more people switching to gravel than anything else, more than triathlon, more than road racing, and again, a very timely product that we've been working on, and I think we got lucky that it's been in the works, but I think with the pandemic and not being able to race anymore, a lot of people switch to gravel, right? So you still have that, because the beauty about gravel, and for those of you that don't follow gravel, because it is very, very new, it's almost like a mountain bike and a road bike got together and had a child, and that's the gravel bike. So it allows you, it doesn't have suspensions or anything like that, but it allows you to hit gravel trails, single track trails if you want, dirt, farm roads, and it allows you to get off the road. And that I think was one of the biggest things, the biggest advantages is you get off the road, it's a little safer, but a lot of people don't want to jump into mountain biking because it's slow, it's technical, it's actually very, very difficult. So I think it's a much bigger leap for a triathlete or a road cyclist to go to mountain biking. So this is a nice little middle ground where you get off the road, but you still carry that speed that you like to see on the road.
Okay, so it's more off-road than mountain.
Yes.
Where you're not going to take the thin, race wheels.
Yes.
On your road bike or your tri bike.
Exactly.
Off road or anything like that.
Yeah, you probably don't want to do that. It'd be pretty slippery. So yeah. Okay. So in fact, there's an amazing race here. It's going to be called the Wasatch All Road. It's in August, and it's a 100-mile gravel race right here in Heber. So a whole bunch of us will be participating.
Okay.
Ventum is a sponsor of it, and these races are popping up left and right and center. So, and the beauty about this gravel bike, it's really purpose built for performance. And gravel has been a bit of the wild, wild west because it's grown so quickly. There isn't really a standard yet. In fact, a lot of people were using cyclocross bikes. Do you remember, like back in the day, cyclocross?
Yeah.
So a lot of people are using cyclocross bikes. So, people are just coming around to making gravel specific bikes. So it couldn't have worked any better for us.
Okay. So 100-mile bike ride, off-road. So is that like the next up and coming sport, or is it still is it more recreational now in the gravel community, or?
It used to be, but now it is up and coming. I mean, like for example, this race is a huge prize purse for gravel. Pros are coming in. It's very legitimate. There's also one in Kansas. It's called Unbound, and that's a 200-mile. It's a 200-mile gravel race that's coming up on June 5th. There's a 200-mile version and a 100-mile version, but the heavy hitter is the 200-miler. So, and that will have 2,000 people.
Whoa!
I mean, it's legit. Yeah.
So, I mean, what kind of trails are these? Because like when I think of road races, everyone does a road century ride, and those are pretty common because you're on the big road and you have that. When I think of off-roading, I'm thinking of smaller trails.
So It's gonna be, you know what? I can give you a perfect example. CNO Canal.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about, right
Yeah.
there. You got the paved section, but then next to it, you've got the gravel dirt
Mhm.
section. Double that in width, and that's your typical. Because they're fire roads essentially.
Okay.
They're usually fire roads, but the consistency of them is very much like that CNO Canal Trail.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's it's a lot of fun. I've actually predominantly been riding my gravel bike now, for a couple of reasons. One is it's like parachute training, like for like a sprinter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm using it on the road, so I have to work so much harder to keep up with all my road cycling friends. Right? I mean, I'm killing myself, so I can only wait until I switch over back to my NS1, and
Right.
I'll just be flying. So
Okay.
yeah.
I like that parachute. So you're taking the heavy bike out, like strength training. So,
Yeah,
so
exactly,
when
exactly,
you drop down to your road bike,
exactly. And
it's
it's
not
actually so
fly.
much. It's not even so much the weight because they're not even a pound away from each other. Actually, the Ventum GS1 is very light. It's
Okay,
really the rolling resistance of the tires.
gotcha.
So to go from 28s or 30s on my road, I have 42 knobbies. So like that rolling resistance is crazy high.
Oh man,
So
I can't imagine. I'm gonna have to try that. I'm gonna have to try one of those out. I haven't done any off road cycling. Uh,
yeah, oh, you have to try
Even
it.
though I have taken a tri bike on the CNO Canal from time to time,
Have you?
which is a little sketchy.
Oh
So,
yeah.
having a gravel bike would have been very useful at the time. But
I would agree.
I'm gonna have to experiment and try one out just to see what that is.
Absolutely, you should.
Now going back to the Ventum one a little bit, and what you're doing at Ventum. I know during the pandemic, one of the things you were doing to kind of keep everyone engaged in the cycling community was the Ventum CEO challenge.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
what was it? What did it? I jumped in every so often to see it, but
Yeah.
what inspired that, and what was it all about?
So it was actually, it came about very organically. So I was in Switzerland skiing when the pandemic hit, and Switzerland and Italy were some of the harder hit countries early on. So the U.S. was shutting down their borders, um, to those countries, and I was able to get on the absolute last flight out of Switzerland back to the U.S. So I got home, and then my office. This is before anything serious started happening here. Well, I mean, it probably shut down a couple weeks after that. But I got here, and my office said, "You can't come in. You can't come to the office. You were in a high risk country. You need to quarantine for 2 weeks."
Right.
And I mean, if you know anything about me, like putting me in a house for 2 weeks that's difficult. That's very difficult. But they were pretty serious about it. Said, okay, send me one of my Wahoo kickers. So they brought one of my Wahoo kickers here, and I would just sit on the bike, and because it was cold here, it was still snowing. It was March, and so I started just putting up posts of me and vlogs and just hanging out. And then people started getting excited about it. People were like, "Oh, I want to join you. I want to join you." So I was like, "Oh, let me make a little Strava group." And then it was like a handful of people. Next thing you know, fast forward, I said, I don't know how many weeks. I started the first official CEO challenge, which runs from a Monday to Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was how many miles can you put it on the trainer, right? On your bike, on the trainer. And I'm very competitive, Lloyd. You know that.
I,
So I wanted
I
to win.
I know
Yeah.
that.
So that week, I ended up putting 1,000 miles on my bike, 993 miles to be exact. And to win the last day, I had to do 287 miles on the trainer. 287 miles. That's
Uh,
a lot. That's a
oh
lot.
man, I remember when you did that. It's burned in my memory because I remember I didn't know you had started the challenge
Uh-huh.
until later on in the week, and I was on my own personal challenge that same week. So
Oh,
I remember I'd always wanted to ride 300 miles in a week. That was
uh-huh.
my big goal. And
Yeah.
I remember I finally got it, And when I shared that with mutual friends of ours, I think like the very next day you came out with like you dropped 60 something in one day for almost 1,000 in the week. I just laughed at myself like, wait a minute, no matter what you try to do, there's one of your friends who's going to do something more outlandish and crazy than you. Whenever I look around and I say, well, it wasn't that bad because I know a guy who did something a lot crazier than me.
I couldn't agree more. And I feel the same way. Every time I do something like that, then I hear of a story of somebody doing something 10 times crazier. And I'm like, I don't understand how they do it. So, yeah. But yeah, so that was the first CEO challenge and evolved from there. The next CEO challenge was a week long of how many feet can you climb? And again, super competitive. So I killed myself. I ended up climbing 65,000 feet in 1 week. But people got excited, got motivated, and there were little prizes. And so it started, I think, when I first started, it was like, I want to say 30 people. And by the end of the CEO challenges, we had over 1,000 people jumping in and doing the challenge. And that was what's important, right? It's to keep people motivated, to keep people active. And there's just a fun way to keep in touch. So yeah. I loved it. That was a lot of fun.
Now, are there any plans to, the world's reopening bit by bit, any chance of doing some more CEO challenges
sure.
this year, or what's that going to look like?
That's a good question. I'm still trying to formulate my my schedule for this year. I am doing Unbound, which is that gravel race I was telling you about. I am doing the Wasatch All Road, which is that 100-mile gravel race as well. So I've got a couple of big gravel races. I will run my age, so 41 miles. So I should try to fit in the CEO challenge somewhere in there for sure.
I think you should. I think you should. I mean, I don't know how to top, each of the ones you've already come up with. So, you got to really start thinking outside the box of what crazy thing can I do this time that would, motivate you.
That's true. That is so true. Yeah, I'm gonna give it some thought.
Get you up every month, for 7 days to crank it out. But I definitely, the world opens up. I think you should stick one in, either this summer or this fall, as a flashback.
I tend to agree with you.
I think the community would appreciate it.
I would have done. I will think about it and set something up and let you know.
I will let all my folks know. I've got a question for you. Milo wants to know, can you just put narrow tires on a gravel bike for road riding?
Okay, that is an excellent question. And the answer is absolutely. Now, one of the things that we did with the GS1, and here's me cannibalizing our own sales. Ready? The GS1 has the same technology as the NS1, and it's fully integrated. The reason I tell you this is that it is extremely aerodynamic. So what I do, oftentimes when I'm traveling and I don't want to take a whole bunch of bikes with me, is I have my gravel bike with 2 sets of wheels. One set of wheels right now it has 42 knobbies, and my other set of wheels is my road wheels.
Okay.
So I just pop it. So if I know I'm going to do if I want to go do a hard road session, I can just put my road wheels on my gravel bike and I will keep up no problems, just as if I was on my NS1.
Okay.
But I can also put the thicker tires and then go off road. So yes, the answer is yes, and that's a very good question.
Okay.
Now, again, the industry probably doesn't want me to say that because then you're just going to buy a gravel bike and 2 wheel sets instead of 2 bikes.
Well, there's always a chance to buy, an additional bike. So I don't think that, even though you can add on wheels, it doesn't. I don't think that's going to stop anyone from getting that extra bike.
And here's the thing, and honestly, I mean, if budget was an issue, I mean, that is a very good way to do it. But be careful what gravel bike you purchase. So we designed our gravel bike to the equivalent to our road bike, right? So it has the mold technology, we have EPS, we've got a carbon layup that's a certain structure, everything's integrated. So it does act that way. However, traditional gravel bikes will be heavier, will have a different geometry, and won't give you that road feel that you're usually used to.
Okay.
So something to compare.
So
something to think about.
So you gotta be mindful of which one you get it to make sure it works out exactly this way.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Good. So with you've got those two bike races lined up for the summer. Your birthday race. Any other smaller events that or do you only do
Yeah, I only do big. I can't do small. I can't do small. Honestly, I used to like. I mean, I think you put on. Didn't you put on a 5K?
Yep.
Like a few years ago.
Yep.
And I think I participated in that. I remember that. I can't do those races anymore because I'm losing my speed. Like I remember there was like a Mother's Day 5K, and it was in the park, and I believe I won that race. So I think I go big and I go long because I'm just getting slower in my old age, and so it's just easier. It's like all the young ones are not going to come after me. They're like, oh no, I'm not doing 50 miles.
You're giving away the secrets of getting older.
That's right.
I learned long ago I cannot go fast, but I can go long.
Exactly.
Exactly. The speed may not be impressive for short distances, but if you can hold it for 20, 30 miles, it all of a sudden becomes not too bad.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. But I will sprinkle in some marathons in there. I am signed up for the London Marathon. This was a kind of they postponed it obviously because of COVID. It was supposed to be a year ago, right around now, but the issue is it's right before Kona, and so that's a little challenging. I plan on doing the New York City Marathon. That should be fun as long as they have it in the fall. But then I have some really cool excursions. In fact, we're going off the coast of Oregon. And we have a sailboat. It's 6 of us. It's actually a media trip. We're sailing to this island, and it's 6 days of just riding around this island, both our road bikes and our gravel bikes. So I think I'm going to have a lot of these kind of longer adventures set up. But that's not to say I wouldn't jump in any marathon or anything like that. I would.
Okay.
I miss organized races. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad they're starting to come back. So I know even here, people who normally only race long distances, some organizations threw on some small sprint Olympic races recently, and the registration was through the roof. When I saw the participants, it was like, wow, these guys usually only do long distance races, but they were all just trying to get out and participate in something.
Oh, I believe it. Oh, the demand is there. The demand is certainly there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with gravel, road, tri-bike, is there a mountain bike next, or what is there anything that you can tell us about that might be coming down the pipeline?
Sure. I'm not supposed to, but whatever.
No, don't worry about it. I won't tell.
Okay, deal. As long as you don't tell. We've been working really hard on a new version of the Ventum One. Look, the Ventum One's been around for a few years now. It's time for it to get a refresh, a revamp, and to innovate some more. And so this summer, you're going to see a new Ventum One come out.
Okay.
Yep. I don't think I've said that before publicly. So.
All right. I'm gonna have to race mine a little bit more, and then see if I switch out or get a few miles on the one that I have.
Well, we'll take care of you when the time is right to switch out. So
that's perfect. I've got that here, so I can show the powers that be.
Yeah, excellent.
Oh, great. Well, Diaa, I just want to thank you so much for taking some time to chit chat with me. Tell me all about Ventum.
This stuff is my pleasure. My pleasure.
If so since you're an avid runner, give me a couple tips that you would give to a beginner who's looking to get into running plus endurance running, since you're going big. So we're talking about folks who may have already done a marathon or something, but now there's they're interested in great adventures, knocking on rim to rim, or or things like that. What's a couple of tips for that runner?
It's the biggest tip. So you've done a marathon, you really want to get into the ultras. the biggest challenge for me, which I suspect will be the challenge for a lot of others, is your mindset. You got to change your mindset. So marathons, you've got miles, everything is dialed into the T. You've got the markers, you've got your aid stations, you've got your paces, you've got your guys with the pace balloons. So it's so organized. And ultra running can be that way sometimes, but it's also a very free spirited kind of culture. And that's what I had the hardest time with, which is stop looking at your watch, right? Because it means nothing, right? When I think it's possible. I'd have to look at my stats, but it's possible at parts of the Grand Canyon when it was like this that I probably averaged 3.5 miles in an hour, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And so, but if you don't have that mindset because you do marathons and it's flatter and it's fast and it's like, wait a minute, I usually do 7:30s. This was a 9-minute mile. That's it's a whole different beast. It's a whole different beast. And so it's the kind of thing where I would never say to somebody, don't wear your watch, because I can't do that. But just turn on your watch and just let it be. Do you know what I mean? And if you stop for 10 seconds to tie your shoe or to grab your backpack and get some nutrition out, don't feel the need to stop your watch and then start your watch again. It's just go out there and treat it like an adventure.
Yeah.
More than I have to hit certain paces at certain times. That's not the case. Yeah.
That is a big thing. I mean,
oh yeah,
I know that feeling. I've been trying to do that recently, where you just kind of go with the moment and just have fun with it versus, all the metrics. We always get dialed into all the numbers and everything else versus just, going out and having fun with it.
Exactly.
Now, what would you say to the cyclist who, you dropped it out there where you're just, hey, I'm going to go off for 100 miles. I'm going to go off for a 200 miler.
Yeah.
Most cyclists aren't working with those kind of numbers just as a random, I'm going to point this out.
That's a good question. Look, I would say similar advice applies, or part of it. Like, just go out and have an adventure. But there's one big difference.
Okay.
Eat. So one of the biggest mistakes cyclists do is they do not eat enough on the bike, right? And the problem with and running to a certain extent is when you bonk out there cycling, you are done. And that is the most miserable place you can be. So you can have the greatest day of adventure and stop at donut shops and grab a donut, or have your fuel with you and hang out with your friends and come back after a century and climbing 15,000 feet and can't wait to do it again. Or you could go out there and bonk in the middle of nowhere with no cell phone reception, and you're on the side of the road, tears in your eyes. This is coming from experience, by the way. Sorry. This is experience talking here. So, all that stuff can happen, and it's all because I forget to eat on the bike, And the reason being is a couple folds. One is you work differently on the bike than you do on the run, right? And again, on the run, it's pretty structured. It's when I go X amount of miles or X amount of time, I'm going to have a gel, or I'm going to have a bar, or I'm going to have something.
Right.
On the bike, it's very different. You could have a stretch where you're climbing a 12% grade where you may not even feel comfortable taking your hand off and reaching into your jersey and eating, right? Mm-hmm. Or you might be in a really fast group where you're really bunched up and you might be uncomfortable. So there are different factors that will make you forget to eat. And I think there's no worse thing than bonking out in the middle of nowhere, and you can't. And it's like you feel helpless. There's nothing you can do. You can't even call a friend. So,
you got it. Don't forget to get the calories in.
Yes, that's so important.
So my last question for you is: I'm going to see you. I see you at Ironman because you're the global partner sponsor for Ventum. I just saw over the weekend that several of the Olympic athletes are going to be rocking Ventum when they go to Tokyo for the games. So the next and only logical question is: I need to know when am I going to see a Ventum team at the Tour de France?
That's a good question. It's definitely a dream of mine. I'm not going to hide it, but I think we're a few years away. Ask me again in a couple of years.
Okay. I mean, I just need to know because it seems like that's
a dream.
the path that you're on. Where I'm seeing the Ventums at all these major events, major sporting things. So
yeah,
I just got
definitely a dream of mine.
See you at the tour.
Yes, I love that. See you at the tour.
Well, if anyone wants to, keep track of Ventum, you can follow them on IG at Ventum Racing, and of course, if you're in the market, you could always find at shop.ventumracing.com is where you can find everything from them. But again, Diaa, thanks so much for taking the time to chit chat with me. I'm going to take you up on your offer and visit you out in your new spot sooner rather than later.
Please do.
All right. Thanks a lot. You have a good one.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
If you like the video, make sure you hit the like button, share, subscribe, and hit the notification button.